Thank you all for joining us at our virtual national conference on ending homelessness. We come together at a time fraught with anxiety, uncertainty, and fatigue. There's COVID, the economy, climate change disasters, racial reckoning, and deepening uncertainty about how these things may play out in the future. But it's also a time of great opportunity and hope. There's a new administration and Congress focused much more than the last on getting people into housing, getting them health care, daycare, jobs, and food. There are the things we've been learning and that we can put to use to get people into housing faster. We've learned about housing people successfully in hotel and motel rooms and about the link between housing and health. We've learned to listen better to what people say they need and what will work for them. We've learned that help that isn't culturally competent may not be that much help at all. We've been learning a lot about what works best, and incredibly, at the moment, there is money on the table to implement these solutions, a lot of money. And there's a lot more money potentially on the table in the reconciliation bill. So there are tremendous challenges, it's true, but also tremendous opportunities before us. And as always, the question is not just what lies before us, but if we're going to be able to seize the opportunities and fight off the challenges and really make something happen around homelessness. Because honestly, if we're smart and strategic and determined enough, we could really make a significant reduction in the number of people who are homeless. We could, but will we? Do we have the energy and the willpower to make it happen? Here are some of our opportunities. There is a lot of HUD money targeted to homeless people and others. $5 billion for the emergency housing vouchers and another $5 billion for the home program for acquisition and rehab and some services, rental assistance. There is also quite a lot of ESG/CV money still unspent. Plus, there's the emergency rental assistance money, $46 billion at the Treasury Department. Funds that are very well suited to help certain homeless and unstably or temporarily unhoused people. There is a lot of additional new funding you may not always think of, but that you could be using, and I certainly hope you are using. The TANF Pandemic Emergency Assistance Fund, the Native American and Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grants, the Family Violence Prevention and Services Funding, SAMHSA block grants for mental health and substance abuse treatment and services are ramped up, rural health care, and home and community-based services via Medicaid. And of course, there are the tax payments that people are eligible for, the child tax credit, and the economic impact payments. All of these can contribute to ending homelessness. It's not just the targeted homeless programs that we have at our disposal. And we're meeting while Congress is in the process of considering the budget reconciliation bill. We all have to see how that goes, but at the moment, things look pretty good for significant additional resources in the areas of housing and services. Jonathan Harwitz from the House Banking Committee will likely have an update on that funding at the We Got Money workshop at, I think, 1 p.m. today. And it should also be addressed at the Catching Up with Congress workshop on Wednesday at 1. But the point is, there's a tremendous amount of money on the table that could make a serious dent in homelessness. I emphasize could, because it's also very possible that we, in homelessness and related sectors, will fail to use this money strategically to reduce the number of people who are homeless. We will certainly use the money, and certainly people will be helped, but by failing to use it strategically, we will miss the opportunity to really reduce homelessness. Using the money strategically will be hard and a lot of work, and that is a tough ask right now. I know that a major barrier to accomplishing all of this is your bandwidth at the moment and that of your potential partners as well. I know that everyone is exhausted and that in many places your staffs are depleted, that you may already have had to turn down resources because you simply didn't have the capacity to absorb them, let alone to create meaningful but time-consuming partnerships and pull together all these multiple programs. And so I know that it is easier and more doable to house people who are ready to move on from permanent supportive housing or to exit rapid rehousing. It's easier to house people who don't need much help to find a unit, who are more acceptable to landlords, who are more appealing to your partners at the PHA or the home program, who don't need much in the way of services. I know that it's easier to house people on the brink of homelessness who are about to be evicted. But surely we cannot ignore the 230,000 people who are sleeping on the street tonight, people with extremely poor health and at desperate risk. Surely we cannot ignore the pregnant women and families with young children who are living in cars or RVs or tents. Surely we cannot ignore the older adults who have lived in shelters for years, shelters that can no longer meet their needs. Older adults who found a few weeks or months of respite in a hotel room during COVID, but who have now been returned to those very shelters. Maybe we can't do everything, but at the moment, we are at a moment which, in my view, we are unlikely to ever see again. These are resources on the table for the first time ever that would allow us to make a serious dent in homelessness. So surely we must take the opportunity as best we're able to use these resources to significantly reduce the number of people who are literally homeless, focusing on those who most desperately need a home. To pursue a more strategic approach to using these resources to end homelessness, it may help to be guided by a set of values as to what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. We would suggest that you consider the following values. To use the funds to the maximum extent possible to reduce the number of people who are currently experiencing literal homelessness. This will help to right-size the current homelessness system by reducing the number of people that it has to serve. If you don't use the resources to help people who are already literally homeless, but rather to help people who are housed, but whose housing status you want to improve, for example, for move-on or rapid rehousing, you are relegating those with no home to continued homelessness and an overwhelmed homelessness system. Second, use the funds to help people with the highest needs wherever possible. There are so many reasons to focus your efforts on high-need people. One is that you're much more likely to, at the same time, be addressing race equity goals, since people of color are overrepresented in the high-need group. Also, high-need people tend to be homeless longer, so moving them to housing, again, helps to right-size the homeless system, frees up space for others. And of course, there is the fact that by definition, high-need people need more help. Another value is to use the funds in ways that reduce racial disproportionality and disparities. As I mentioned, BIPOC people are not only overrepresented in the homelessness system, but they are often homeless longer, make up a disproportionate percentage of the unsheltered population, and have more serious needs. These resources could help to eliminate both disproportionality and disparities if used strategically. A first thing you might want to do is to create a race equity action plan so that you start with the imperative to use the resources not only to address the most acute needs, but also in ways that reduce disparities, inequities, and disproportionality. As you consider your approach to the overall problem of homelessness, you can look for indicators of where and how people of color are losing ground in terms of equity and work with your strategic partners to target those geographies or populations. Another value is the importance of partnerships, particularly between the housing and behavioral and primary health sectors. Long-term solutions to homelessness lie in these partnerships. And finally, an important value is to act with urgency, but also with care. Congress provided these funds for the emergency, and people who are experiencing homelessness need the help now. In terms of capacity to help, if to move faster you need to hire staff or raise salary of current staff, you may very well be able to use the stimulus resources to do that. And you may have to hire people knowing you may not be able to sustain increased staff in the long run. But again, this is an emergency. This is not business as usual, and people need help right away. These are some values that may be helpful to you in deciding how to proceed in the near future. A good example of the decisions before you right now are how to target the emergency housing vouchers and the home funding, and should we be lucky enough, the new housing opportunities that get funded through the reconciliation bill. We have a suggestion. As I said, to significantly reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness, the funds will have to be used for people who are literally homeless now, and high-need people should be a priority. But to move quickly will also require flexibility. A way to achieve both, that is to meet both the urgent needs and to move quickly, is to prioritize a number of categories of high-need homeless households to be prepared to move forward quickly with whichever tenants can be matched to the housing that's available. Working with PHAs and home offices, you could prioritize the following groups: unsheltered people, including those in encampments, long-term shelter stayers, people who are chronically homeless, disabled, and or in need of permanent supportive housing, families with children under 6, pregnant women, and people over age 50. As units become available, and using equity criteria as well, you can move in people who are a good match for this space and who are ready to go. You can move faster and more flexibly. On the other hand, we would recommend that the funds not be used for prevention of homelessness. You can use emergency rental assistance or TANF or other resources for prevention. Not to be used for people in rapid rehousing as a group. Most people who have received rapid rehousing do not become homeless again when the subsidy ends, even though it looks like they're going to. It's also true that a large percentage of people do not end up staying in the housing they acquired through rapid rehousing. They move somewhere else that is more affordable or accessible to them. Very few of them, it appears from data, will become homeless, even if they do not get an emergency housing voucher or a home unit. So targeting people timing out of rapid rehousing as a group is not efficient in addressing homelessness. Certainly, there are people who are timing out of rapid rehousing that do need help, but it needs to be assessed on a one-for-one basis. Similarly, people who have been in hotels, motels, and other non-congregate isolation and quarantine settings should not be automatically prioritized for housing, we don't think, notwithstanding how heartbreaking it may be to see them return to shelter. Of course, you should certainly prioritize high-need people who are in this situation. These are all hard and challenging decisions to make. Who's going to receive this assistance? To choose among extraordinarily vulnerable people and to put together the partnerships needed to house them, it's really hard. I recognize that. On the other hand, the decision not to house, for example, unsheltered people, is also a pretty hard decision to make. There is no question that any person or family that receives these incredible resources will be someone who could use the help. There's no question that the funds will do good. The question is, can we use the funds strategically enough to make a major reduction in homelessness for the first time ever and put ourselves on the track to eliminating it? I know you have the skill and knowledge to do that, no question there. I hope you have the capacity and the will to do it as well. And to move us forward along this path, I hope that you all heard about an exciting challenge that the Biden administration issued to elected leaders across the country just yesterday. House America, an all-hands-on-deck effort to address America's homelessness crisis. Yesterday, Secretary Fudge from HUD, who's going to join us tomorrow, I believe, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, and Secretary McDonough from VA, and a group of mayors, governors, and county and tribal leaders from across the country kicked off House America. This bold initiative asks local and state and tribal leaders to join the federal partners in setting numerical goals as to how many literally homeless people they will house by December 31st, 2022. There will be high goals for this rehousing, and of course, if we get some of the things that we've asked for in the reconciliation bill, we could do even more. They're asking state and local elected officials to set rehousing and unit goals for their own jurisdictions, and then there'll be a national goal as well. The initiative, which I think is incredibly exciting, should really help you do that strategic work that I've been talking about. If you can get your mayor, your county executive, your tribal leader or governor to make a pledge, all of those partnerships and hard targeting work will be a lot easier. Secretary Fudge, as I said, is going to join you tomorrow, and I'm pretty sure she'll be talking about House America, so I will stop stealing her thunder. I know she's going to have much, much more to tell you about. Let me close with two things. The first is to thank you for the absolutely incredible job that you all have done during the pandemic. My colleagues and I at the Alliance know that on top of the personal and family challenges the past 18 months have held for you, you have retooled your programs. You have stood up isolation and quarantine units. You have dealt with new initiatives, funding, and partners. You have addressed healthcare needs and so much more. And all in an incredibly difficult circumstances of the pandemic and the recession and so forth. I know that you are tired and overburdened and understaffed, and yet you continue to accomplish everything you can to make sure that people experiencing homelessness are safe. And for all of that and for so much more, I thank you, all of us at the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Thank you. But second, I have to say again that we have before us an incredible, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and that is to significantly reduce homelessness by getting tens of thousands of people who are homeless today into a home and connected to services. It will be hard to do it, and I know that this is not a good time to be asking you to do it. You already have incredibly complicated things to do for complicated people, and you have to do them fast, and everybody is just worn out and tired. But how can we not try to do it? To move forward, I want to leave you with 3 requests. First, using a racial equity lens, target these incredible resources only to literally homeless people and do your best to serve as many high-need people as possible. We just can't be using these resources, homelessness resources, to help people who have homes and whom other resources could be helping. Second, if your COC isn't already, push it to create an operational partnerships with at least the Public Housing Authority, the Home Office, and a strong health and behavioral health entity or agency. These are the partnerships of mutual understanding and shared mission that will be essential to getting this work done moving forward. And third, to make those tasks easier, if your mayor, governor, and or county or tribal leader has not yet signed on to the federal government's House America campaign, please get them on board. This will make it easier for you to do the first and second things and to reduce homelessness in your community. Thank you so much for what you do and for all you have done to protect people during this dangerous pandemic. It is an honor for us at the Alliance to work with you. We're honored that you are participating in our conference, and we have the deepest admiration for the hard work that you do. We thank you so much for joining us today.